Yeah, so,
Yeah, checked all the boxes.
the guys can sure my vote as well.
He is. Okay, before I officially start this hearing, I just need to do a test of the live closed captioning system. And we are good. All right. That saved me 10 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Benna, and I serve as Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, and I'd like to welcome all of you here for this public forum. This meeting is subject to the open meeting laws of the state of Nebraska. Notice of this meeting was published in the Omaha World-Herald, advising that a public hearing would be held on Initiative Measure 439 on this date beginning at 1:30 p.m. at the Thompson Alumni Center. A copy of the notice will be made part of the public record and is hereby made part of the hearing record for this afternoon, including proof of publication from the Omaha World-Herald. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Law is displayed on the easel to my right, your left. An agenda and materials prepared for the public in the form of pamphlets and agendas were available at the door. The Secretary of State's office is required by law to conduct this hearing for purposes of receiving comments from proponents and opponents and from members of the public on Initiative Measure 439 concerning Protect the Right to Abortion that will appear on the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. Appearing with me when you walked in was Mia Sanderson, a UNO student, and she is at the entrance and will be happy to assist you with any information or questions. I'd also like to introduce our court reporter, Matthew Quinn, who will be making the official record of these proceedings. This afternoon's hearing covers the 2nd Congressional District for Initiative 439. We are required to have a hearing on each initiative in each of the 3 congressional districts. I'm not going to be acting as a judge where I make rulings on evidence or ruling on who's right or who's wrong. I'm serving as a moderator, according to law, to ensure that we have an orderly proceeding for the benefit of those in attendance and especially for our court reporter. In a moment, we will have 10-minute opening statements from a recognized proponent and a recognized opponent of the measure. After that, we will allow citizens to testify, alternating between proponents and opponents of the measure. When you came into the room, you were asked to sign in if you wish to testify. After opening statements, I'll begin with those who signed in. After that, if there's time, I'll ask to see whether or not anyone else who did not sign in wishes to testify. Can I ask by a show of hands who intends to testify this afternoon? Okay. At this point, I will allow for 5 minutes of testimony from each testifier. I reserve a right to change that to 3 if we believe that we are going to reach the end of our public comment period. Our last hearing actually went the entire 3 hours. And if it looks like that it's going to go the entire 3 hours, based upon similar testifiers, I may choose to go to people that have not been able to testify at all in any of these proceedings today. But right now, I do not believe I'm going to have to do that. So I will keep you posted as we go along throughout this hearing. We will continue until everyone who wishes to testify has a chance to do so, or we reach 4:10 p.m., whichever comes first. Afterwards, the recognized proponent and recognized opponent will give their closing statements. When I call you forward to come testify, I'll ask you to state your name and please spell it for the record, and please state if you are testifying on behalf of an organization. This will help that the court reporter can accurately reflect your testimony. Now, for some of you, this may be the first time that you have spoken in front of a large body of people. This is being live streamed on YouTube, and sometimes you may have the thought to go a little bit faster because you want to get through it really fast. The court reporter may pause and ask you to slow down a little bit, or may stop you to clarify, may not have heard a word or a sentence or an organization. You're not in trouble. Don't worry at all. They've done it to me plenty of times throughout this process, but it's to make sure that we have an accurate record. So just slow down, take your time, and we'll get through it. I will be timing each testifier. We need to be conscious of the fact that there are other people who want to testify, and they'll need a reasonable chance to do so. I will notify you when you have 1 minute remaining with my new and improved upgraded 1 minute sign from this morning. I will, again, because of the number of testifiers, We want to be cognizant. And so if I do interrupt you, I'm just going to ask you to please sum up your comments. It's nothing personal. It's nothing in regards to, we just need to be able to, for everyone who came here today, I'm going to try to get for their ability to speak. If you have a question, you can write out your question and hand it to one of my team members. We will look through them and try to raise the most pertinent questions with one of the recognized speakers when they make their closing remarks. As required by law, the Secretary of State's office has approved and made an official pamphlet regarding each one of the ballot measures. These pamphlets have the text, the ballot language, and arguments for and against the ballot measures as provided by recognized sponsors and opponents of the measure for your viewing. We have a number of pamphlets available here tonight that are located by the front door, and Mia can assist you. Pamphlets are also available in our office in the Capitol and at the State Election Division at 13th and M Street in Lincoln. Also, all of our county election offices throughout the state also have these pamphlets. You can also download copies from our website, sos.nebraska.gov. A staff member can give you that site if you'd like to have it for reviewing or downloading information. When you leave today, do not be afraid to take as many as you want home. I have one more hearing, and I don't need to take these back to the office. I want them out into the community. So with those opening comments concluded, we will now start with the opening statements of sponsors and opponents of the measure. And I first would like to recognize Dr. Emily Patel to please come forward to share opening remarks for the proponents.
Would you like a copy?
You can do it after. It's fine.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Patel, EMILY PATEL, and I am a maternal fetal medicine specialist in Omaha, Nebraska. My views are my own and do not represent those of my employer. I'm a Nebraska native, a mother, a wife, and a doctor who specializes in high-risk pregnancy. I completed my higher education and medical training through the University of Nebraska System, UNL, and UNMC, and earned an endorsement in maternal fetal medicine at Duke University Medical Center. In total, I spent over a decade of my life in medical training to become an expert in high-risk pregnancy care. I am before you today to express my support for ballot initiative 439, and I ask my fellow Nebraskans to do the same this November. Ballot Initiative 439, the final question on your ballot, will protect access to abortion in the Nebraska Constitution until fetal viability. As you will hear in the testimony, Initiative 439 is in line with national standards of care for obstetricians and would allow physicians and obstetric providers to practice evidence-based medicine for Nebraskans. And despite what you may hear today, fetal viability is not a vague or broad term. Fetal viability is a medical term used to describe the point at which a fetus has the possibility to survive outside the uterus and is well understood by medical professionals. In fact, Ballot Initiative 439 was written in consultation with physicians like myself to ensure we can provide the highest standards of care to our patients and undo the harm caused by the current 12-week ban. That is why over 600 medical professionals from across the state published an open letter this week to support Initiative 439. As a maternal fetal medicine specialist, my job every day is to care for patients who have pregnancies with medical complications. In the mother, complications may range from heart disease to diabetes to kidney disease. In the fetus, they range from congenital anomalies to genetic syndromes. In addition, I often treat pregnancy-related complications like preterm labor or early rupture of membranes. These are a few examples of the hundreds of pregnancy-related complications I have seen and cared for during my many years of experience. When I care for these high-risk patients, I become a part of a very intimate time in their lives, the formation of their family. I see them through some of the best and possibly worst times of their lives. The foundation of this journey is trust. I spend hours over multiple visits diagnosing, counseling, and treating, and planning difficult deliveries. I want anyone in my care to know I'm giving them the best evidence-based medical care available, and I also want them to have access to that care in their home state. Even though I am one provider before you today, as I stated before, over 600 medical providers signed on to an open letter in support of Initiative 439. We have put our names out there for all to see without hesitation because we believe that abortion care is health care. To those Nebraskans who may be confused about the ballot initiatives, what they will or will not do, or why healthcare workers are passionate about this issue, I hope to convey my why to you clearly today. First, it's important that you know that maternal mortality is a public health crisis in the United States. The U.S. sees 3 times more maternal deaths per capita than the next high-income country. For Black women in the U.S., risk of death in pregnancy is nearly 3 times that of their white counterpart. We need to take maternal health very seriously. Simply by carrying a pregnancy to term, a person has 14 times higher risk of dying. And mortality is not the only factor to consider. Patients I have cared for since our ban has gone into effect in Nebraska have suffered morbidity as a result of being forced to carry a pregnancy to term against their will. Even the healthiest of patients can suffer serious consequences related to pregnancy, including mental health crisis, hemorrhage, infection, need for a cesarean, pulmonary embolism, retained placenta, preeclampsia. Yes. Cesarean, pulmonary embolism, retained placenta, preeclampsia, seizure, hysterectomy. The list is endless. So let me now break down Initiative 439 and why you should vote for 439. Nebraska currently has a 12-week abortion ban that has caused harm to patients in our community and has forced others to flee our state to receive care. Initiative 439 would restore access to abortion care until fetal viability and enshrine that right in our Constitution. Initiative 439 will restore power over healthcare decisions to patients and medical providers without government or political interference in those private decisions. Initiative 439 is a community movement. The initiative was started in Nebraska and is a grassroots movement run by local organizations, leaders, and doctors. The language for this ballot measure is not vague and is based in medical fact and written in consultation with doctors like me. If Initiative 439 does not pass, it could open the door for further abortion restrictions and even a total abortion ban. Governor Pillen has said himself that he wants a total abortion ban in Nebraska. The current 12-week ban is simply a first step toward more harmful restrictions. I would like to share a few stories to help the public understand who the patients are that need abortion care. All identifying information was removed. A couple came to my clinic for their anatomic ultrasound. This is the ultrasound that is routinely performed at 20 weeks gestation and is when most congenital anomalies or genetic conditions are diagnosed in pregnancy. They were excited to see the fetus on ultrasound. However, the mood changed quickly as I told the expectant parents that I had concerns. I identified a serious anomaly that would mean that the child would either be stillborn, which means die before birth, or would die shortly after birth. They were shocked and devastated by this news. We then discussed the options moving forward. My job is to educate the family and give them all available options. We discussed continuation of the pregnancy with follow-up, palliative care, hospice care, meetings for the newborn, and discuss the route of delivery. Alternatively, she may opt to end the pregnancy knowing this outcome. A person in this situation may ultimately choose abortion for a number of reasons. Delivering a silent newborn is the most painful, heavy silence you can fathom. At times, it's complete silence, and at times the silence is punctuated by wailing from a devastated mother or father. It's a scene one never forgets. However, that scenario should never be forced upon a person. Also, she knew that carrying the pregnancy could lead to complications like in her previous pregnancy. Furthermore, she knew she could not face strangers asking joyfully, "When are you due? Is it a boy or girl? You must be so excited." She made the choice that was right for her, but she had to leave our state for care. She later told me she felt like a criminal. Patients need to have a choice. I could also tell you about a patient who was bleeding after 12 weeks, but there was still fetal cardiac activity, so nothing could be done. She became severely anemic and still ultimately lost the pregnancy, but only after a delay in care. I could tell you about the patient who had an abnormal placenta that could put her life at risk months down the road, but because she was not bleeding then, nothing could be done. She had to leave the state to get care. I could tell you about the diabetic with kidney and heart disease and 3 children at home who worried that pregnancy could kill her or leave her with significant medical complications, and she wouldn't be able to care for her children. She left the state for care. I could share a story of a patient who wanted an abortion due to a severe fetal condition but couldn't afford it and was forced to carry the pregnancy. She had to undergo multiple procedures during pregnancy due to complications and is now left with the trauma of a pregnancy that was forced upon her. Or what about the adolescent who was raped, who was afraid of her perpetrator and did not have the support to report the assault and was left carrying the pregnancy of her rapist? What I will always remember is patients saying to me, "I never thought this would be me," and no one thinks it will be them until it is. And when that time comes, that person and that person alone should be able to decide what medical care is best for them. In closing, I want to warn people that they will hear some lies today. I want to get ahead of those right now. Initiative 439 will not take away parental rights for minors. Initiative 439 will not force taxpayers to fund abortions. Initiative 439 will not change health and safety standards. Initiative 439 will not allow healthcare workers who are not licensed to practice obstetrics to make decisions about abortion care. Initiative 439 will not allow anyone to force another person to have an abortion. The process of informed consent will not change with Initiative 439. I hope that my testimony today will give the public a glimpse of what pregnant patients in Nebraska may face. I always hope for a healthy mother and fetus, but that is not always the reality. In those cases, families need to have choices that are rooted in medical science, not choices dictated by a legislator or a politician. Thank you for your attention today. Please vote against 434 and for 439.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome a representative of the recognized opponents, Brenna Graz.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. My name is Brenna Graz, Brennagraz, and I am a mom of littles, a wife, and an attorney in Nebraska who is deeply concerned about the broad, vague, and ambiguous language in Initiative 439 and its devastating impact it will have for women and children in Nebraska. During my time this afternoon, I will focus on the lack of licensing requirements that the language poses, the confusing redefinition of fetal viability that allows for elective late-term abortions, the initiative's broad use of the term all persons, opening the door to coerced abortions, and the perpetuation of human trafficking of young girls that this initiative could allow. First, Initiative 439 could allow unlicensed non-physicians to make fetal viability determinations and influence the decisions of a woman in crisis. Nebraska law currently requires licensed physicians to make these medical determinations using reasonable medical judgment. But look at the language of Initiative 439. It contains no such requirements. Instead, it opens the door for any, quote, treating healthcare practitioner, end quote, to exercise, quote, professional, end quote, judgment to determine the extent of women's rights. Women in crisis need medical guidance from a licensed physician with proper medical training and licensing. Second, Initiative 439 uses unscientific language to create a new, confusing viability standard. Initiative 439 contradicts the current medical standard of care for viability determinations by licensed physicians by transforming it into one the average voter can't clearly understand, and neither can medical professionals. The media parrots that viability under Initiative 439 means 22 or 24 weeks. But Initiative 439 does not simply require viability as the average voter or the medical community understand it to be, meaning the ability to simply survive outside of the womb. It instead transforms a medical standard requiring a significant likelihood of sustained survival without extraordinary medical measures. This new medical standard creates the disturbing potential for pushing viability determinations late into the second and even into the third trimester of pregnancy, well beyond actual fetal viability. The inclusion of this transformed viability standard is actually opposed by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, also known as ACOG. In fact, ACOG publicly states that the concept of fetal viability, quote, perpetuates incorrect and unscientific understandings of medical terms and leads to interference in the practice of medicine, and goes on to say ACOG strongly discourages the inclusion of viability in legislation or regulation. Simply put, Initiative 439 perpetuates an unscientific understanding. Yes. Simply put, Initiative 439 perpetuates an unscientific understanding of fetal viability under the guise of a definition that alters medical standards and practices and authorizes elective late-term abortions in Nebraska. Third, the language of Initiative 439 broadly states that all persons would have a constitutional right to abortion. Use of this broad language opens the door for third parties to claim a constitutional abortion right. This endangers women. It could create a competing right for abusive traffickers and partners, giving them the ability to manipulate or force a woman to undergo a surgical abortion or swallow chemical abortion pills against her will. This is the opposite of empowering women. Fourth, and relatedly, Initiative 439 endangers young women and girls by enabling human traffickers and banning parental notification requirements. As previously stated, Initiative 439 would create a right for all persons, but all without any state interference. Stated simply, the language jeopardizes the safety of women and young girls. Human traffickers, abusive partners, and sexual predators could all be enabled to take their young victims for an abortion without either parents or law enforcement ever knowing. Human traffickers could be the only one holding the hand of our young girls in crisis, not their parents. Banning parental notification will prevent parents from being able to provide the love, care, and support their daughters need and deserve. We can do better than this. Our daughters deserve more from us. So today, as you listen to proponent testimony, remember, Nebraskans can do better for women. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to the public portion of the testimony. I will be alternating between supporters and opponents of the measure. If you have written remarks, feel free after your testimony to provide them to the court reporter so that he can have an accurate transcript of what you said. If you have it on your phone or a tablet, he will have his email address available, and you can email that testimony to him, again, to accurately present the record. Also, I did forget to mention, if you could please check your cell phones to make sure they're on silent or off. We want to make sure that we don't, it can be stressful enough to be doing the testimony to have a cell phone go off behind you. I have shut the doors as there's some other events going on, and I didn't want to make sure that noise did not come into here, but feel free if you need to leave, just please leave out the back doors. And with that, we will start with the first supporter. On the last thing, this is my 9th hearing that I have done. I've realized some people's penmanship may not be great on these. Also, my reading and pronunciation is terrible. The first day of school was always terrible for me. With the last name Benna, you can do it about 8 different ways. So I understand, and I do apologize if I get your name wrong. Please correct me on the mic when you spell your name. So first, Audrey Horn.
Hi, my name is Audrey Horn, AudreyHorn. I am a lifelong Omaha resident, a mother and a stepmother of a total of 5 adult women. Plus, I have grandchildren too that I'm frightened for. Today, I'm speaking up to encourage my fellow Nebraskans to vote for Initiative 439 and against Initiative 434. I want my daughters, granddaughters, friends, family, community, everyone to have the same reproductive rights that I had. I volunteer at Planned Parenthood as a patient escort to ensure patients have access to reproductive care. And I volunteer because Planned Parenthood supported me to obtain birth control and reproductive care when I needed care. When Protect Our Rights petitions, now known as Initiative 439, were first available in last November, I immediately volunteered to help with the 439 petition effort. As a volunteer, I read the petition language to every voter and made sure they understood exactly what they were signing. I still have the entire petition language memorized. And many Nebraskans voluntarily told me their pregnancy complication stories, and they were enthusiastic to sign our petition. to protect the fundamental right to abortion, because abortion care saved their lives, their daughters' lives, their spouse's life, etc. They didn't need to tell me their stories, but they did. And they were frightened that this right could be taken away from them and their lives or their friends' or families' lives would be endangered. As a volunteer, I also traveled across the state to collect signatures from people all across Nebraska to support the freedom of Nebraska residents, freedom to make their own medical decisions. So this is just not just an Omaha issue, it's not a Congressional District 2 issue. We collected signatures from all 93 Nebraska counties. I didn't personally go to all 93, but it felt like it. The opposition petition, known as 434, or Protect Women and Children campaign, was the entire time lying to Nebraskans to try to confuse Nebraskans. I witnessed it myself as they falsely claimed to voters that they were pro-choice and then not allowing voters to remove their names from the wrong petition. The only reason the opposition petition was even started was for that reason, to confuse voters. As we all know, rich politicians funded that campaign. As I said, they tried to confuse voters during petition signing by falsely claiming they were pro-choice, and they're doing it now with the very misleading commercials and false claims. We heard some of those false claims already this afternoon. This confusion is why, as a volunteer, I have been knocking doors for weeks to educate voters on the proper way to vote to protect abortion care. Voters are frustrated and confused, but that again is the goal. The truth is that a vote for Initiative 434 will make the current abortion ban permanent. This means Nebraskans will permanently lose their ability to make decisions about their personal medical decisions. Initiative 434 does not help women who have pregnancy complications, as we heard from medical professionals. I am not a medical professional. I don't want to make someone else's decision. That's why Initiative 439 does help patients and doctors. Doctors should not have to consult a lawyer when a patient is in crisis. If you've had a healthy pregnancy, we must think of our friends and neighbors who cannot get the care they need and have to travel hours to surrounding states to get care. I heard too many stories from frightened Nebraskans. I will not share their stories to respect their privacy, and that's what's critical is patient privacy. We need to let patients and doctors make medical decisions and leave politicians out of the process entirely. Voting for Initiative 439 and against 434 will end Nebraska's current ban so that families have control over their own medical decisions and not the government. Once again, Nebraskans can stop government interference. Vote against 434 and vote for 439. Thank you.
And then first for opponents, Adam Schwend.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Secretary. My name is Adam Schwend, ADAM, SCHWEND, and I am the Western Regional Director of State Affairs for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. I'm also a Nebraskan and live in Lincoln with my wife and 5 children. Every year in states, cities, and small districts, voters are asked to weigh in on a number of ballot measures. With more contentious measures, they often have campaigns in favor and in opposition bombarding them with what seems seemingly conflicting information, leaving the voter to have to sort through the many mailers, websites, TV, and digital ads, trying to figure out what exactly a ballot measure would do, what the intended consequences would be, and which side they should believe. This year, for Initiative 439, this isn't a cross that Nebraska voters have to bear. That is because several states have passed constitutional amendments using incredibly similar language, supported and funded by the same large national advocacy organizations. We have seen these states and what these initiatives have done. We have seen what these activist groups do after these ballot measures have passed. There is no need to take anyone's word for it. Let's take a look at first the state of Michigan. In 2022, Michigan passed a constitutional amendment establishing a right to abortion in their constitution. After an entire campaign insisting to voters that the measure simply, quote unquote, restored Roe, once it passed, the ACLU and the abortion industry proceeded to file lawsuits challenging laws that required women to be informed about what complications may occur. They insisted that others, not just doctors, should be able to perform abortions. And in June of this year, they filed suit insisting that because of that ballot measure, taxpayers are required to pay for abortions via the Medicaid system. All of this because of a ballot measure that supporters insisted was just, quote unquote, restoring Roe. In Ohio, we've seen much of the same. In 2023, voters were also passed a constitutional amendment. They were also told that the amendment would, quote unquote, restore Roe. But what came after was a legal onslaught by the amendment supporters, working to eliminate health and safety requirements that were in place for years, even while Roe was law of the land. Ohio, like Nebraska, did not permit abortion drugs to be sent through the mail. This allows doctors who prescribe these drugs to examine the pregnant woman, screen her for ectopic pregnancies, and ensure that the woman was not a victim of trafficking, sexual abuse, or domestic abuse. The amendment supporters aimed their lawyers at health and safety laws just like this. And just in this last August, a judge put a stop to them. In her opinion, in the judge's opinion, she made it clear that the amendment went far beyond restoring Roe when she said, quote, the amendment's language plainly establishes that it offers greater protection of individual rights to make their own reproductive choices than those adopted by the US Supreme Court in Roe and Casey, unquote. This isn't the end. In April of this year, the ACLU of Ohio's legal director said, quote, expect more challenges to Ohio's abortion laws from the new constitutional amendment, unquote. Before the measure passed, another ACLU attorney was pressed to say whether or not the amendment would invalidate parental consent laws. Their response was, quote, laws that conflict with the amendment cannot be enforced, should not be enforced. Which laws will conflict? You have to pass the amendment to find out, unquote. Did Ohio and Michigan voters think that by passing their amendments, they were saying that there shouldn't be health and safety standards? That taxpayers should be forced to pay for abortions? That parents shouldn't have the right to be involved in the decisions of their children? I don't believe so. I think they were simply lied to and told that they were, quote, restoring Roe. Fortunately, Nebraskans have the ability to look at what has already happened in these states. We have the chance to look at the actions of the ACLU and the abortion industry, who are also supporting this ballot measure, and see their plans for Nebraska. No one needs to take my word for it. No one needs to take my word for what they would do. They have done it. They have done it in Michigan. They have done it in Ohio. And if Initiative 439 passes, they will do it in Nebraska. Vote against Initiative 439 and for Initiative 434. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, for supporters, Melissa Webb.
My name is Melissa Webb, Melissa SSA-WEBB. I'm representing Nebraska Abortion Resources and myself. I am here today to speak in support of 439, the Protect Our Rights ballot initiative. For those of you who weren't here earlier, I testified about my abortion. When I was 18 years old, I had an abortion at 13 weeks gestation, and it was the best decision I've ever made. I was in an abusive relationship with a much older man. Upon finding out I was pregnant, I knew that there was only one choice for me: abortion. I could not be tied to my abuser for life. After my abortion, I was eventually able to separate myself from my abuser and leave that relationship. Since then, I have attended and graduated nursing school, and by choice, I had 2 children who are currently 6 and 8 years old. However, I should not have to sit here and justify my decision for seeking healthcare for what was the best decision for me. I should not have to shout from the rooftops and relive my abuse over and over and over and over and over again to get someone to listen to the millions of women who are begging to have rights over their own bodies. If I had any other medical procedure, I would not have to explain to a room full of strangers how I was abused and try to morally justify an appendectomy or a root canal to you. Why should I have to do this for the medical procedure of abortion? I am a mother that has no regrets about having an abortion, and I refuse to feel any shame for doing so. A child is not punishment for sex, and the government should not tell people what's best for them and their bodies. In states with extreme abortion bans, the consequences are dire. Studies have shown that maternal death rates are higher in states with these restrictive laws. For example, a 2021 study found that maternal mortality rates were 62% higher in states with severe abortion restrictions compared to those without. Moreover, these states have worse outcomes for pregnancy-related complications, further endangering women's lives. When we restrict access, we push women into unsafe, unregulated conditions or force them to carry pregnancies that put their health and lives at risk. In Nebraska, passing Protect Our Rights ballot initiative number 439 is essential for safeguarding the freedom to make personal healthcare decisions without government interference. It allows medical professionals to make decisions with their patients on what's best for them, not for Jim Pillen, who doesn't hold a medical degree, and what he thinks is best. 1 in 4 women have had an abortion, and 6 in 10 people who have had an abortion are already mothers or caretakers of some kind. This means that everyone in this room and everyone in Nebraska loves someone who's had an abortion. Abortion is healthcare, and without it, we're putting the lives of Nebraskans at unnecessary risk, and this is why it is extremely imperative that we support and pass number 439, the Protect Our Rights initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, for opponents, John True.
My name is John, John True, True. And I'm here as a private citizen. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and to the doctor and attorney who led off the discussion. I want to preface my comments with what will seem to be a little bit of a sidebar, but it relates to what I'm going to end up with. I didn't know who would be here today, so the comments were generic, but now I'm going to be specific without names. We now know that there are people in the room who have chosen to have abortions. And so as I speak about abortion, I want to be very sensitive to those who do not agree with the position I'm taking against 439. So I want to emphasize why I take that position and offer some words to the people who oppose that position. There is nothing that a person can do that is unforgivable by God. Jesus Christ died for our sins, and there is only one unforgivable sin, and that is to refuse God's mercy. Now, why I started off that way is to make sure that I don't have people who disagree think that I am trying to condemn women, being opposed to women. God will forgive anything you do if you come to him and ask him to do so properly through our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, I'm opposed to 439 because 439 will enshrine in law homicide. Life begins at conception. There is much evidence of this. And to take human life deliberately and knowingly is morally murder. That does not mean that everyone who participates in an abortion has committed moral murder because they don't know any better or they're coerced. But that is the main reason that I want to state my opposition to 439, because it's homicide. I want to share a supposal with you, and it's coming off Mr. Schwenn's example. If I mispronounced your name, Mr. Schwenn, I apologize. But the issue here is a supposal. A 13-year-old girl gets raped, by her coach. The coach has the opportunity to interdict the parents finding out about that by taking her to the abortion clinic. Now, the coach has committed a crime, but he can cover it up by taking her to the abortion clinic. If the parents find out about this, that trip to the abortion clinic could be interdicted by the power of the state. Why? Because the amendment says there should be a fundamental right to an abortion, and a fundamental right means that it can't be interdicted by parents, by other loving people. So this 13-year-old, I remember this as a supposal, this 13-year-old could be left on her own with this abuser. Could. Now that's a supposal. We haven't said it's happened. Thank you. And I will tell you, in my personal experience, I have had women who've told me that they regret their abortions. And so I want to spare women that regret. So please vote for 434 and against 439. Thank you for your time. I have no written comments.
Next, we have Natalie Carter.
Hello, my name is Natalie Carter, Nataleiecarter. I am a mother. I am an abortion clinic escort. I am the recipient of an abortion, and I'm here representing Nebraska Abortion Resources. I am a lifelong Nebraska resident and voter in Douglas County. I'm here today in support of Ballot Initiative 439, and I urge you and all Nebraska voters to vote for 439 in the upcoming election. This cannot be dumbed down to a black and white issue. This is not about saving babies. This comes down to controlling women, and quite frankly, that is terrifying. I should not have to sit here and beg for freedom over my own body. If I were to be bleeding out because of a pregnancy complication, I would not want a doctor to deny doing their job because of a law that didn't take my well-being into account, would rather have me bleed to death. With all due respect, this is not a lane for politicians. This is for the doctors, the educated professionals who specialize in health. I grew up attending Catholic school here in Omaha, first St. Robert Bellarmine and later Marian High School. From a young age, I had someone else's agenda shoved down my throat before I could understand it. days of silence for the unborn, being asked to write letters about things I did not understand, all the while not even being taught proper sex education and instead reverence for life. We are not a Christian nationalist nation, but with ballot initiatives like 434, we are surely towing the line. I implore you all to uphold the separation of church and state. If Nebraska voters don't believe in abortion, that's wonderful. Don't get one. But my hope for you and for your children and grandchildren after you is that no one ever needs life-saving care that you are voting against. It is a scary thought to change our state constitution to deny access to health care. If we're being honest, though, this is a measurement to control women. What's next? Will I be allowed to vote in the next election? Can Nebraska enact that all young men have to get a vasectomy, which is a reversible procedure until they are ready to have children? No, because it's ludicrous to take away someone's rights to their own body. I was able to access safe abortion care in 2011. Every single day, I am grateful. It saved my life and my future. I love being a mom more than anything in the world. My children are the highlight of my life. I would have never had them had I not had my abortion, and I don't know that I would even be alive. Bringing a child into the world with an angry man, someone who abused me, was simply not an option for me. I have no regrets that I terminated a fetus. I will tell you the scariest part were the protesters. I had to walk through people yelling, screaming, and shaming, but their actions only motivated me to get more involved. I currently escort at an abortion clinic, safely getting patients inside to their doctor's appointments. And let me remind you, this is not a black and white issue. People come to the clinic for a variety of reasons, and I would like to share a story with you that will stick with me the rest of my life. And this is not a supposal. I once helped a patient into the clinic who was carrying a fetus she very much wanted. She had prior health conditions that had left scarring on the inside of her uterus. As her fetus grew, the scar stretched and ripped her open from the inside out. She was in such severe pain, she was doubled over, and her doctors told her that her life was at risk to continue this pregnancy. But she couldn't even access care at her doctor's office, and instead she had to come to our clinic where she had to walk in upstairs, hunched over in pain, as ignorant people spewed hate in her direction. I sit here today and urge you to not take away my medical freedom. I urge you to keep moving Nebraska forward. Please vote against ballot initiative 434 and for ballot initiative 439.
Thank you. Next, Scott Orso.
Good afternoon. Name is Scott, S-C-O-T-T, Orso, O-R-S-O, and I am testifying on my behalf myself. I would like to testify in opposition of ballot initiative 439. Initiative 439 is the same tired rhetoric of protecting women's health or that abortion is health care. There's nothing healthy or caring about abortion. The word abortion is merely a gentler way of saying murder. Murder is the taking of an innocent life. Abortion takes the innocent life of an unborn child. Abortion is therefore murder. In no other circumstances is it okay for a person to have unconditional and arbitrary authority over another person's life because of a state of existence. Initiative 439 grants this kind of authority. This initiative allows the most vulnerable and defenseless of our society to have their lives taken away and then rationalized away. In a society that allows this, what assurance do the rest of us have that at some point our lives won't meet the same fate? Often, Initiative 439 has utilized extreme and rare instances where a woman is put in a very difficult position with her pregnancy. And because of these difficult positions, it is justified we should have wide open abortion. This is as opposed to adjusting or augmenting current law or providing some other means. Allowing wide open abortion is not the answer to addressing these rare exceptions. As well, Initiative 439 expresses a right to abortion access. The dilemma with that is rights to anything can't exist without first having the right to life. What about the unborn's rights? As for the government interference, it is the government's responsibility to ensure the rights of its citizens. There are no rights to take a life, but there is a right to be alive. Rather than voting in favor of something very harmful to women and children, we should express our own love for both persons by voting no for Initiative 439. We know what real love looks like, and we should follow in his footsteps. Christ is King. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Caitlin Cooper.
My name is Caitlin Cooper. It's KAITLYNCOOPER. I'm here on behalf of myself and Nebraska Abortion Resources as a volunteer and in support of Initiative 439, Protect Our Rights. I volunteer as a clinic escort. I am unapologetically pro-abortion. In doing this volunteer work for many years, there have been many patients that have stuck with me over time, one being a very young patient who came with her mother. The reason this patient still sticks in my mind is her mother crying and saying that the entire time when she was disclosing her pregnancy to her parent, she just kept crying and repeating, "I just want to go to school." A child, an unprepared child who under 434 would have been forced into birth that irrevocably determines her path in life. I empathize with that child about the fear of an unplanned pregnancy, and I empathize with her mother over the fear of what will come for her child. 439 maintains allowance for her to access to abortion and abortion resources. I refuse to empathize with those who call her a baby killer when she was walking into her doctor's appointment. I refuse to empathize with someone who calls a child a murderer and tells her she's a terrible human because her beliefs differ than theirs, like many patients at our clinic come to. I refuse to empathize with someone that can't tell the difference between a dolphin fetus and a human fetus at 10 weeks or use falsehoods and scare tactics to make their point. We've heard talks about arguments and religion and about people wanting babies and about the moral argument for this initiative. The bottom line is your religion is not mine. Your desire for a child is not my responsibility to shoulder, and our morality clearly differs in argument. I want people to thrive and to live unburdened. I want a state that supports social programs and women's health care and public schools. I want a world where we have a true decision in how our life proceeds. Last year, I became pregnant after my plan A of contraception failed. I called my friend Shelly, who unbiasedly provided me options. Free of guilt, free of influence, she provided me options and asked how those made me feel. She reassured I was a good mother, a good person, and capable. She reassured me that my decision was mine. I miscarried. I breathed for the first time since finding out I was pregnant. The timing for myself and my living, breathing, loving child was not right, and we are in a much better place this year than last. And if it came down to it, I know in my heart and my head that abortion would have been the right answer to ensure my child's success and to ensure my own success. 439 provides us the opportunity to move to correct a jilted system that fails to separate religion and law. 439 allows a choice in the direct path of our life. 439 gives our state the opportunity to correct more pertinent issues, such as our failed foster care system, the lack of available food for children. This gives the opportunity for our state to provide comprehensive contraceptive information to students and families, which can actually reduce abortion. Banning abortion doesn't stop abortion, it stops safe abortion. I urge the public to vote for 439 and against 434. I'm capable of having a conversation with my doctor about my own decisions, and I'm capable of making my own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Spar.
Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Jeff Spar, Jeffspar. I am speaking against 439 and 434 on part of myself and Abolish Abortion Nebraska. I call account the executive officers of our state on two issues: the undermining of both our United States Constitution and the Nebraska Constitution, and breaking the royal law of God. Look at the first issue. As an executive officers, each of you took an oath of office to support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Nebraska, and includes a section not to be improperly influenced, or in biblical terminology, not to show partiality. The 14th Amendment of the United States, Section 1, states, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." When John Brigham brought forth this amendment, he sought equal protection for, quote, "any person, no matter whence he comes, or how poor, how weak, how simple, no matter how friendless," unquote. You as executive officers have allowed ballot initiative 434 and 439 to come this far. It was your duty to stop it, and it was first introduced because it shows partiality to a group of people. The preborn, which have no wealth, are weak, still developing, and in scope of 434 and 439, so friendless, they are murdered with no one to be held accountable for their lives. Article 1 of our Constitution and our state motto are a reflection of the 14th Amendment. In fact, the very nature of our motto was designed to reaffirm African Americans had the same freedoms. The 14th Amendment was used again in the case of Standing Bear, which occurred in Omaha, Nebraska. Among his words were, quote, "The hand is not the color of yours, but if I prick it, the blood will flow, and I shall feel pain. The blood is of the same color as yours. God made me, and I'm a man." It was a landmark case, recognized that an Indian is a person under the law and entitled to its rights and protection. And the inaction of the executive officers, 439 and 439, if it passes, you're allowing by the vote of the people the taking away of equal protection of the law for the preborn, who are persons. Our Nebraska Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Standing Bear case all acknowledge God, from whom we are endowed with certain unalienable rights, which leads me to the second issue, the royal rule of God. In Romans 13, people are called to be subject to the governing authorities, who are appointed by God to be his servants for us for good. But if we do evil, the government is called to execute judgment on those who do evil. Abortion isn't evil, for it is the murdering of image bearer of God. In that Romans 13 passage, the final 6 commandments are summed up in this saying, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Love does no harm to a neighbor. This is the royal law of God. And I call the executive officers to repent for allowing the evil of these initiatives 434 and 439 to get this far. I call on the legislative branch to repent for their inaction in not giving the preborn equal protection. I call on pastors to repent for lack of preaching on this issue. I call on doctors who signed a document in support of 439 to repent, as your actions will do harm to my preborn neighbor. I call on all of us, myself included, to repent for our apathy to those God has called a heritage, a reward, arrows in the hands of a warrior, a crown, fruit of the womb, and are fearfully and wonderfully made. Thank you.
Next, so I don't embarrass myself, the last name Reynolds in support. Sorry, just didn't want to take a shot. Okay.
Hi, my name is Buff Reynolds, BufreynoldS, and I will be voting for 439, the Protect Our Rights ballot initiative, and against 434. I am a badass stepmom, an abortion clinic escort, and I am a very active member of our creative community here in Omaha. I am here because I work with young people every day who are scared. Young women, teens, preteens, even women well into their 30s, 40s, they're all afraid they're going to lose control of their bodies, lose control of their livelihoods, or quite simply lose their lives because they could lose access to abortion in Nebraska. Accidentally getting pregnant can completely upheave a woman's life and alter her path and plans permanently. She should be able to choose. Men get the ability to choose their path when and where they want to have children, and women should always be afforded those same rights. Pete Ricketts does not know every medical circumstance that exists that would determine the need for an abortion. I, for one, would appreciate it if Pete Ricketts and his ilk would stay out of every woman's vagina and uterus. I keep hearing the argument that life begins at conception. I, for one, have never celebrated the event of my parents having sex to conceive me. I celebrate my birthday because that is when life begins. You can quote your Bible all day long. Your religion does not get to dictate what women get to do with their bodies. What this is really about is controlling women under the guise of saving fetuses. Controlling access to abortion is an act by the patriarchy and for the patriarchy. Nebraska can do better for women by voting in favor of 439. Thank you.
Next, Amber Parker.
I'm going to read scripture, Ezekiel
Amber,
chapter
could you
23.
Spell your name for the record, please.
Oh, spell it again. Okay, AMBER, PARKER. Verse 36, the Lord said to me, Son of man, will you judge Ohala and Oholiba? I apologize, not pronunciation on those correctly. It goes on, then confront them with their detestable practices, for they have committed adultery and blood is on their hands. They committed adultery with their idols. They even sacrificed their children, whom they bore to me, as food for them. Verse 38, they have also done this to me. At the same time, they defiled my sanctuary and desecrated my Sabbaths. On the very day they sacrificed their children to their idols, they entered my sanctuary and desecrated it. That is what they did in my house. In the United States of America, we have the governing law of the land, the Constitution of the United States of America, and we also have then within that the state sovereignty and powers that were, how we'd say, given to the states to make sure that we wouldn't have a King Georgian government and things like that again. I think that's very important to identify. I hate 434 and I hate 439, and I'll tell you why. Both of them are a cover for sex trafficking. Not only shedding of innocent blood, that already in hurting the heart of God. God loves us all. There's a plan for us to prosper us, to give us a future. That context of scripture, God was talking to his people. I believe they may have been in exile at that time. But the point being is that I know I'm a sinner saved by the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him, meaning Jesus, will not perish but have everlasting life. And there's fear of death, there's fear of torment, there's fear of, is the government going to be over my body? And I say, if you vote for 434 and 439, the answer is yes, the government will be over your body. The answer is yes, that you have given a cover for sex traffickers now to hide underneath 439 attached to state constitution, or 434 underneath it, because the children end up disappearing and they can just be labeled as they were aborted. Have you thought of that? Have you thought of what's taking place in these hurricane and in these areas, or under Biden and Kamala Harris, 300,000 children missing? And I'm going to tell you, there are some evil Republicans just as Democrats. I do want to let you know that on 434, the former Governor Ricketts, appointed by Pillen, now United States Senator, who's in a race himself, gave money to one of the initiatives. We, as a state, must stand to protect these children. Many people do not understand that these bills lay the foundation to make these children disappear, some of them still living, and then become sex in the sex slave trade. Do you not understand that you are aiding and opening the door through 434 and 439 to bring drug cartels and human traffickers another side of a business called organ harvesting? But they want us to think it's just, oh, you're all against each other and hate each other. No, there's pain, there's hurting, there's suffering. And the reality is, what happened to the children in Hawaii? What happened to families split up and in devastating areas? How FEMA is using money. We need to come together. We need to get these answers. If we cannot protect the innocent and stand up to protect the innocent, then that's a reflection of how evil and depraved our hearts have become, as that of Romans chapter 1. And I'm not going to do anyone favors to sit and say what your ears want you to hear, because there's a battle we don't see. Ephesians addresses it. It says, we not wrestle with flesh and blood, but powers, principalities, darkness, governors, and rulers of this world. As a Christian, I am to love my enemies and those who persecute me. And I have to tell you, I have to learn. I grew up in an abusive home. It was hard to learn to love them, but say it's okay to uphold justice and report to law enforcement what they had done or done. And there's a time where God has called government to use the sword against evil and to kill and take out that evil. We have came to that time in Jesus' name, and I pray the United States government rises up to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can I just straighten this?
Yeah. Next, we have Cleo Zagorski.
Hi, my name is Cleo Zagurski, CleoZagurski, and I'm a young woman born and raised here in Omaha. I'm here to testify in support of Ballot Initiative 439, which is in line with best practice medical care guidelines and will support people experiencing pregnancy in our state. As someone who could become pregnant, I have a vested interest in the reproductive health care I might receive if I were to become pregnant. I love Nebraska, and I chose to stay here for my college education. I hope to start a family in this state one day and know that policies like 439 will ensure I have the care options needed to thrive here. Pregnancy complications can happen unexpectedly. Initiative 439 makes it so that my physician can provide the care I need without worrying about governmental overreach. Initiative 439 is a common sense policy that shows that Nebraska trusts women and physicians to make ethical decisions that are best for them. If I ever face the scary reality of a potential complication in my pregnancy, I want to be able to make informed decisions alongside my healthcare provider without interference. As a young person in Nebraska, I feel it's essential to voice my opinion on affirming reproductive healthcare access and ensuring that lawmakers and the public consider the needs of the next generation. Many of those making these decisions are further along in their lives and may not fully grasp the harm healthcare restrictions impose on future generations. Please think of your daughters, nieces, and granddaughters who someday may find themselves in life-threatening situations during pregnancy. Initiative 439 will ensure they can navigate that difficult process in an equitable and manageable way. Nebraska officials often talk about brain drain and the desire to keep young, bright minds here. We must create an environment where we can thrive. I've had the pleasure to collect signatures to get Initiative 439 on the ballot, and through that experience, I've connected with fellow young people. While at Taylor Swift sing-along events, public libraries, farmers markets, and country concerts, strangers shared stories with me about why ensuring access to care matters to them. Please listen to these members of our shared community and make our home a safe environment for young folks. I urge you to connect with young women in Nebraska. We have hopes for our futures, and I want to live in a place where I can thrive. Young people want to keep the government out of their business. Young people want to ensure that others have access to healthcare. These are not radical wants. Let's uphold Nebraska's good life and support Initiative 439. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Pen Zhao.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for giving me this chance. And my name is Peng Xia, Pengxiao, and I came from China and now a U.S. citizen and live in Omaha for 22 years and 24 years in China. And now I'm a university faculty member and teaching human genetics. And previously, now I have three lovely and beautiful children, and with my wife, and I'm representing my whole family against both 439 and 434. So, and I want to give everybody my personal testimony, because previously I was a very totally liberal atheist and supporting the full-term abortion, because I came from China. Abortion is very common and one-child policy, so even my family members just, if we found anything uncomfortable, and then you just go to abort your children. So that's very normal. That's like a cultural habit in my mind until in September 2009. At the time, I was in a ninth floor in Hilton Hotel in downtown Denver. Okay, thank you. Downtown Denver, and then Hilton Hotel in the ninth floor. I just turned on the TV. I just tried to commit suicide. And then I open the window and put one leg outside. And then just 1 second before I'm going to jump, and suddenly I heard a voice in Chinese. He said, "I love you, don't jump." Instantly, in my atheist mindset, came to all the gods' name, like Buddhas, Indian gods, even Allah. I thought he must be one of them. I said, "Even you are God, you cannot stop me dying. But before I die, I want to know who you are, and then I can die successfully." And then he told me, "I'm Jesus." And then I feel a supernatural power and drag me in. And then he asked me to open the drawer. There's a Gideon Bible. He asked me to open the Bible. I randomly opened it. It just came to 1 John, God is love. And then the TV was playing a song, a love song, Can't Smile Without You. I don't know, I can't smile without you, can't smile without you. So for so many years, I didn't have tears, because at the time people would tell me about God, about Jesus. I rebuked them. I said, "You're losers. I'm winner. I'm a scientist. I only trust in science and myself." But at the time, I knew this Jesus, his true love. He chased me. He found me. So I've overwhelmed by his love. And then later, I got 4 surgeries. I almost died, but he just supernaturally saved me. And then one day when I read the shortest Bible verse, Jesus wept, I was weeping. I asked him why I wept. And then he just turned me back to 4 years ago in September 2009, he said, Peng, you know, as a person as stubborn as you, I use three supernatural ways to save you. First, I call you, I love you, don't jump. Second, I ask you to open the Bible, God is love. Third, I use that song, Can't Smile Without You. I didn't understand. I thought I can't smile without him. He said, no, I can't smile without you. If you jumped, I'm going to be weeping for you. So later when I was praying, I saw a vision. I was in the cliff, and then the bottom is a lake. Okay. The bottom is a lake of fire. I was going to jump. That's a hell. And then right on that moment, he stretched his right arm and saved me. So he showed me he loved me the same as he loved all the humans. So today we are talking about all humans because our Constitution acknowledges the right of life to all humans. But now, because of the 439 and 434, they try to bring the unequal right of life to the preborn children. So, because they are voiceless, so we can just decide whatever, we can kill them. Because killing, murder is not a right. Because we don't have a right to kill anybody else. We don't have a right to even kill ourselves. So that's his love. Jesus loves everyone. I just want to mention our Constitution is one, because our pledge of allegiance, one nation under God, Jesus, that's our foundation. So Constitution is the foundation and gate. We cannot open the gate of killing. So I also want to say, NE means N means no, E means evil, no evil of shedding innocent blood. This is a destiny. And then good life. Nebraska is a good life state, goodness of God, and life for life of Jesus. I just pray people's hearts can turn to God and vote against to both 434 and 439. Save life. Thank you.
Next, we have Joy Katharima.
Good afternoon. My name is Joy Katharima, JoyKatharima. I'm here on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska in support of the ballot measure 439. Nebraskans must be allowed to make the personal medical decisions that are best for themselves and their families without political interference. For the last nearly 18 months, Nebraskans have been subject to a 12-week abortion ban, not based in science or evidence, but only based on the agenda of anti-abortion politicians. The 12-week ban has already brought a host of negative consequences and harm to pregnant Nebraskans and their families. However, we know that anti-abortion politicians are already planning further restrictions on abortion and will not stop with the current 12-week ban. The Protect Our Rights initiative puts decisions about abortion back into the hands where it belongs, with individual patients and their doctors. The ACLU of Nebraska offers its full support for ballot measure 439.
Next, Sandy Danik.
I am Sandy Danik, Sandy, and I'm Executive Director of Nebraska Right to Life. I am here today to speak in opposition of ballot measure 439. If passed, it would enshrine a right to abortion in the Nebraska Constitution. And here are just a few examples of what could be a result of that. A full-term baby could be legally aborted because its mother tells a healthcare practitioner, which may or may not be a licensed physician and would most likely be the paid abortionist, that having the child would have a negative effect on her mental health. Historically, the courts have defined the health exceptions so broadly as to include even non-medical reasons such as interruption of education or career or financial issues. If there is a likelihood that the child in the womb would need extraordinary medical measures to survive, it could be aborted up until birth. Not only are those extraordinary measures not defined, but they are most likely determined by the paid abortionist. A child predator or human trafficker could take a minor into an abortion facility and obtain an abortion for her without the knowledge of anyone, including a parent or guardian. Since Measure 439 includes the stipulation that there shall be no interference from the state, several existing laws meant to protect the health of both the mother and the baby in her womb would most likely be negated. Just a partial list would be common sense measures such as bans on partial birth abortion, dismemberment, webcam abortions, parental notification and consent laws for minors, informed consent, the requirement to make an ultrasound available to the patient should they request it, the requirement that doctors direct women to have information on how to reverse the abortion pill when the drug is prescribed should she change her mind, laws preventing taxpayer funding of abortion, and protection of preborn babies from 12 weeks gestation, with exceptions for rape, incest, and medical emergencies. It would also prohibit the Nebraska legislature from seeking further protections for the unborn. Nebraska Right to Life initiated or supported many of these common sense laws as we care about the two lives at stake in an unintended pregnancy. Nebraskans voted those laws into existence, showing that they too care about the mother and child. Women and their children in Nebraska deserve a society that shows support for them in an unplanned pregnancy, rather than the ending of the life of the preborn child and leaving the mother wounded with the physical and emotional effects of abortion. As a society, we can do better. Thank you.
Next, we have Zoe Miller.
Hello, my name is Zoe Miller, Zoemiller, and I am the Policy Fellow with the Nebraska Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. The Nebraska Coalition and its network of 20 direct service programs ensure support for survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, trafficking, and stalking in every county across Nebraska. We support the rights of survivors of domestic and sexual violence to access healing and justice on their own terms. Survivor choice in navigating trauma is the very foundation of how we do our work. With this grounding philosophy, we support Ballot Initiative 439 and oppose Ballot Initiative 434. Nationally, only 30% of survivors report to law enforcement, and of those, less than 15% are convicted. Survivors often do not disclose their abuse to anyone, and forcing them to recount details to quote-unquote prove they were sexually assaulted is incredibly re-traumatizing. Exceptions do not account for reproductive coercion, where abusers may tamper or destroy birth control, prevent access to contraceptives, manipulate their partner into becoming pregnant, or force their partner to continue a pregnancy. Individuals who experience birth control sabotage are twice as likely to experience an unintended pregnancy. Initiative 439 would allow survivors more time to make a safe and informed decision. Forcing someone to carry a pregnancy after violence can worsen their trauma and put their health at serious risk. Survivors of domestic and sexual violence experience a severe violation of their body. Regaining control over their bodies and lives is essential to healing. Our work as advocates is supporting victims in that journey. If a survivor of any form of domestic or sexual violence decides they cannot go through with the pregnancy resulting from this, they deserve access to care that is not conditioned on their willingness to share the traumatic details of their victimization. They often need extra time to recognize a pregnancy and make decisions due to the intense trauma they have experienced. Survivors might require counseling, support, or time to safely escape their abusers. Financial and geographic barriers can also delay access to care. Pregnancy is a particularly dangerous time for people in domestic violence situations where abusers may use the pregnancy to further manipulate and exert power over survivors. Homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the U.S. Access to abortion care is crucial for the health and safety of survivors of sexual and domestic violence. Even when exceptions are listed, like in Initiative 434, survivors often face complex legal hurdles, delays, and increased risk. Giving survivors more time to access legal abortion helps ensure they can make safe, informed decisions without risking further harm. Voting for Initiative 439 and against Initiative 434 is a vote to protect survivors' well-being and autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry that she didn't have anything, that's why. So, yeah, I can go, I'll go back, yeah. Next, we have Kathy Badura.
Kathy Badura, Cathybadura. And I'd like to speak to two things. One is to offer another perspective of a comment that's been made a couple times now, where women have chosen to have an abortion because of complications during their pregnancy. And I'd just like to point out a New York Times investigative report stated that 80% of genetic testing abnormalities were incorrect. And I can give you a real life example. I had a friend who was advised to have an abortion with her second pregnancy due to CMV, that's cytomegalovirus. And that virus could cause hearing loss, vision loss, premature birth, developmental issues. My friend courageously chose to continue with the pregnancy, and guess what? The results were incorrect. The baby was born without any abnormalities, no vision loss, no hearing loss, no developmental delays. And on the contrary, he grew up to be very successful, graduated in the top tier of a very well-known high school here in Omaha. He's living his life normally, successful businessman. Their family would be short that person if she had taken the advice that was recommended to her. The second thing I'd like to speak about is I find it so strange that people who are proponents for 439 keeps talking about women's right to choose, but yet in the amendment it says all persons shall have the right to abortion. So that includes men, that includes sex traffickers, that includes abusers. They can force their victims to have abortions, and that is happening right now. And as the lady just before me said, homicide is the #1 cause of death in pregnant women. I choose to go ahead and read these actual documented cases of abuse, and I will continue reading all these different cases until my time is up to show you that 439 would not help women. It would cause them to be more victims. So this 13-year-old returned to a molester after first of 2 abortions. In Arizona, a judge found Planned Parenthood negligent for failing to report an abortion performed on a 13-year-old girl who was sexually abused by her 23-year-old foster brother. The clinic did not notify authorities until the girl returned 6 months later for a second abortion. A lawsuit alleged that the girl was subjected to repeated abuse and a second abortion because of the clinic's failure to report suspected abuse. The man was sentenced to prison. Mother helps son use abortion to cover up statutory rape of 12-year-old girl. Girl has complications. a Pennsylvania mother began campaigning for a federal law to prevent anyone from taking a minor out of state for an abortion in order to circumvent parental consent laws after a 12-year-old daughter was taken out of state for an abortion by the mother of the girl's 18-year-old boyfriend. The girl's mother only learned of the abortion after her daughter began experiencing complications, including severe pain and bleeding. The boyfriend was later convicted for interfering in the custody of a minor. Abuser poses as father of 16-year-old girl in order to obtain abortion. A 36-year-old man was sentenced to 18 months to 2 years in prison for felony child abuse after he posed as the father of a 16-year-old girl whom he was sexually abusing and signed consent forms for an abortion at an Omaha abortion clinic. And that's why in the amendment where it says without interference from state or its political subdivisions, that includes parental notification and consent. If 439 is passed, the parents will not be able to be notified and give consent. Informed consent will not be a requirement. Simple things such as reporting of how many abortions are done, the term of the pregnancy, having a documentation of a pregnancy test, that's what that means in this, when it says without interference from the state or its political subdivisions. Those common sense requirements that are already in law will be eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Hill. And I apologize, you had not indicated whether or not you wanted to testify, so that's why I didn't have.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Hill, Jennifer, Hill, Hill. I am an obstetrician gynecologist in private practice here in Omaha and a former family physician in rural Nebraska. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of the Nebraska section of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists in support of Ballot Initiative Measure 439. As a board-certified OBGYN here in Nebraska, I see every day the ways in which our current law keeps people from getting the health care that they need and prevents them from exercising reproductive freedom. I witness the heartbreaking struggles pregnant people face when they are denied access to necessary health care. Initiative 439, the Right to Abortion Initiative, will expand access to abortion and ensure that more pregnant people have the right to make critical decisions about their health. This measure is a step forward for patients and for doctors like me. Abortion is an essential part of reproductive health care. Every pregnancy is unique, and complications can unexpectedly arise at any point. By expanding access to abortion care, Initiative 439 would help to open the door for more pregnant people to receive compassionate, evidence-based, needed health care from doctors like me. When faced with a life-altering complication, pregnant people deserve the freedom to make choices that protect their health, families, and future. In addition, Initiative 439 will help restore the patient-physician relationship. Medical decisions should be guided by compassion, expertise, and the unique needs of each patient, not dictated by legislators. Right now, I am restricted by law from offering my patients the full range of medical care that should be available to them. By letting doctors once again provide all evidence-based healthcare, Nebraskans are affirming the principle that healthcare choices belong in the hands of patients and their physicians. This measure will also safeguard other vital areas of reproductive healthcare, such as birth control and in vitro fertilization, by pushing back against the alarming trend of legislative interference in healthcare decisions. This election day, know that a vote for Initiative 439 is about the freedom of our neighbors to get the health care they need and is about stopping government interference in the patient-physician relationship. I urge my fellow Nebraskans to ignore the deceptive tactics of those who want to see this critical initiative fail and to step confidently into the ballot box, feeling secure in a vote that is true to their values. Thank you.
Next, we have Carolyn Manhart.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. And my name is Carolyn Manhart, CarolynManhart. I'm speaking on my own behalf. As a practicing physician in Nebraska for over 23 years, I oppose ballot initiative 439 because it jeopardizes common sense protection for women and girls presenting for an abortion. 439 states that all persons have a fundamental right to abortion without interference from the state or its political subdivisions. None of us want excessive regulations imposed upon us by the government, particularly when facing serious health decisions. But the laws currently in place that have been passed by our state legislature actually protect women and girls. Current informed consent laws passed by the state legislature go above and beyond what physicians normally do in everyday practice. These state legislated laws include an explanation of the physical and psychological risks of abortion, providing information about a medication that could potentially reverse a chemical abortion if she were to change her mind, and a 24-hour waiting period after receipt of this information prior to the abortion. The 24-hour waiting period is in place so the woman or girl has time to pause before making this life-changing decision and to flee coercive situations like domestic violence or human trafficking, where men are forcing her to have an abortion. Other laws passed by the legislature include normal safety inspections of abortion clinics and the requirement that a licensed physician either performs the abortion or is physically present to give the patient the abortion pill. If 439 passes, a non-physician could provide the abortion, potentially through a telemedicine visit. If we really cared about our girls and our women, we would oppose abortion without any safeguards. Don't we want them to have all the information needed to make an informed decision? Don't we want them to have clean facilities where they can receive care from a licensed physician with whom they've had a face-to-face visit? Don't we want to make sure they have had at least 24 hours to ponder this decision? Again, 439 states that all persons have a fundamental right to abortion without interference from the state, but removal of abortion regulations passed by our state legislature would actually result in harm to women and girls. 439 should be opposed. Thank you.
I apologize if I get this next one wrong. For support, is it Brady Kerr?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Brady Kerr, B-R-A-D-Y-K-E-R-R. I'm here representing myself. I'm a practicing neonatologist in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm here to oppose Ballot Measure 434 and to support Ballot Measure 439. As a father and a physician, I encourage all my fellow Nebraskans to do the same. For 3 words, lethal fetal anomalies. Unfortunately, not all pregnancies go smoothly. About 1 in 10,000 pregnancies results in a lethal fetal condition. As a neonatologist, I am frequently asked to meet expectant parents about their fetuses once they've been diagnosed with one of these anomalies. Let me be the first to tell you that despite what you may hear today, the current abortion ban, which 434 will make permanent, fails to protect pregnant women with lethal fetal conditions. I've seen this in my personal and professional life. When I meet with expectant parents after they've received this heartbreaking news, I give them the medical facts I have available about the prognosis, and we work to form the best plan for their family. What is right for one family is not right for all families. They have varying ethnicities, religious and personal beliefs, and life experiences. For most of my career in Nebraska, families had a choice between pregnancy termination or carrying the pregnancy until delivery and having their child die in the neonatal period, hours or days after birth. As a physician, I respect their decision and help them through it. This is my duty. Ballot Measure 434 has no exceptions for lethal fetal anomalies. If 434 passes, it will make it legally impossible for further exceptions, including exceptions for lethal anomalies, to be passed in the future without another constitutional amendment. When my wife and I were attempting to have a child, we first had 2 miscarriages, and that sucked. By our 3rd pregnancy, we were seeing reproductive endocrinologists and being monitored very closely. At 8 weeks of gestation, the fetus was diagnosed with anencephaly. This means the brain never formed and would never form. Children with anencephaly are missing the part of their brain that allows them to speak, understand speech, have memories, emotions, and a personality. They usually die hours or days after birth when they stop breathing. I knew immediately upon hearing the diagnosis what it meant, as I have taken care of anencephalic babies as a neonatologist. Anencephaly is incompatible with life. There is no cure. Our child would die hours or days after birth. We then had an impossible decision to make: terminate the pregnancy or carry the pregnancy to birth and then watch the baby die. Luckily, we had a choice. I tried to approach this with my doctor hat on, but also as a husband. How would my wife handle losing a 3rd child? What would it do to her psychologically when she's showing and people ask her when she's due? What if the pregnancy continues and she has a life-threatening complication of pregnancy, such as sepsis, eclampsia, amniotic fluid embolus, or postpartum hemorrhage? What if she loses her uterus and we no longer have an opportunity to have a child? Since 2023, Nebraskans no longer have a choice for pregnancy termination for lethal fetal anomalies. The vast majority of fetal anomalies are not diagnosed until 18 to 20 weeks of gestation. So now I sit here in Nebraska after choosing to move back to my home state and practice medicine here, wondering, how did we get here? Do we no longer have compassion? What if my daughter is faced with this horrible situation? Will she have no say what happens to her body, to her life? How would I explain to her the state of Nebraska mandates that she stay pregnant so her baby can be born and then die hours or days later? This is cruel. We cannot let this happen. Please, as a father, as a fellow Nebraskan, as a physician, vote against 434 and for 439. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Rose Cole.
Hello, my name is Rose Cole, Rosekohl. I am a 12th generation descendant from Francis Eaton, who crossed the Mayflower and signed his name to the oldest government our nation has, the Mayflower Compact. And I'm passionate about the integrity of our laws, including the Constitution of the state of Nebraska. It says here on the first page of the Constitution, "We the people, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, do ordain and establish the following declarations of rights and the frame of government as the Constitution for the state of Nebraska. All persons are by nature free, independent, of certain inherent and inalienable rights, and among these are life. There shall neither be slavery nor involuntary servitude in this state, and no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor be denied equal protection of the laws. It also says religion, morality, and knowledge being essential to good government, it shall be the duty of legislature to pass suitable laws to protect every religious denomination and peaceful enjoyment of its own. And so with this, our Constitution giving the right to life to all, including preborn children, has been there from the beginning, and we need to uphold things, but also all persons have a right to life, includes mothers. And we've heard arguments all over that women need to be allowed to kill their babies to somehow save their own life. But that is not true. Babies can be removed without being dismembered. You can do a preterm delivery. Murder is not required to save a child's life. My sister experienced 3 or 4 medical emergencies during her experience of parenting, and for all of those, her life was saved without murdering the child. Her first pregnancy was breech, meaning it would be impossible for the baby to be pushed out through natural labor. So they did a C-section, cut the baby out, mother and baby fine and alive. For her second pregnancy, she came down with COVID as she was close to full term. Her blood pressure was spiking. She couldn't breathe, oxygen dropping. It was an emergency. And so they did an emergency C-section, saved her, saved the baby. And for an actual emergency, especially late term, a late term abortion requires administering poison to the baby, and then after it's dead, a few days later, they take it out. If it's an emergency, a few days is not what you do. Delivering alive, a C-section, is the same day in and out. It's the better way. For her third pregnancy, she came down with preeclampsia, which is a high blood pressure. And there's plenty of evidence in the literature that preeclampsia is caused by magnesium deficiency. Magnesium is a cheap mineral that is abundant in the Earth's crust, and perhaps 80% of Americans are deficient in it. A lot of pharmaceutical companies suppress the information that a really cheap treatment is available, but my sister was able to get the magnesium from Walmart, use it, manage her blood pressure, and her numbers dropped the whole pregnancy to the surprise of the experts managing her case. She also had scar tissue from having 2 previous C-sections and a third pregnancy close afterwards. They thought it'd be dangerous for her to carry the pregnancy to term. So the solution was not carry it to term. She had a third C-section a few weeks before the due date. The baby had to spend some time in the NICU, and both are alive. And then as one of the leaders of the Choose Life Now, one of our sponsors was diagnosed with a fatal fetal anomaly. And now I think he's over 70 years old, still alive. I know 2 other people who were diagnosed with a fatal fetal anomaly. Their mother was told to kill the baby. They're still alive to this day. It says in the Word of God, "Today I've set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now I call heaven and earth to witness the choice that you make. Oh, that you would choose life, so that you would live, you and your descendants." It also says, "Woe to those who enact unjust laws and enforce oppressive statutes, thereby depriving the needy of justice and making it impossible for the poorest of my people to have their rights upheld, as they plunder the widow and make the orphans their prey." So I'm encouraging everyone to vote no to 434 and 439 because both are unjust, both deprive right to life to some of the humans, and murdering others is not necessary to protect life. Thank you.
Next, we have Helen Grace.
Thanks for your time. My name is Helen Grace, Helen
Grace. I'm a single mother, sister, aunt, daughter, and pediatrician. I grew up in Nebraska, and I'm the daughter of a pediatrician and an OBGYN. I am here representing myself, and I want to encourage Nebraskans to vote for 439 and against 434. I have a few stories to share with you today. The first is someone I have known since her oldest was born. I take care of all of her children. She had 3 boys and was pregnant with her 4th. I was the pediatrician that she came to show me the heartbreaking picture of her stillborn daughter. I'm one of the people she confided in when she first admitted her partner was abusive. He put her in the hospital. She found out she was pregnant again. For those who are blessed not to be in an abusive relationship, it takes an average of 7 years for someone to get up the courage to leave. And at that time, her life is in danger. And while pregnant, her life is even more in danger. She was there. She was ready to leave. Her 3 children were struggling, and she couldn't keep a job because the school kept calling her for the difficulties her children were having. She was tearful and unsure what to do. I was also not sure what she should do, but I just let her tell me where she was in that situation. My next is the story of my friend, a single mom pregnant with twins, not a planned pregnancy. Her partner was not supportive, and she recently found out was cheating on her. Her son was her only child, and his father had passed away from a motorcycle accident. After her partner told her he did not want the babies, she then found out one had passed away in utero. So now you have twins, one who's alive and one who isn't, and a woman who's 13 weeks pregnant. Her son risks becoming an orphan if she's forced to carry the pregnancy due to potential sepsis or death. Those physicians risk losing their license and their ability to practice medicine trying to take care of my friend. I take care of 2 young boys. Their stories are an amazing testament to my OB colleagues. She already had 3 older children. She was pregnant with her 4th, and she had already had high blood pressure and then developed eclampsia. She had a stroke while pregnant, and the decision was made to deliver her baby at 25 weeks. He spent several months in the NICU and is now doing fairly well. When she found out she was pregnant again, she was terrified. Our discussion went on to encourage her to go speak to her OB. Her OB did a fantastic job, put her on bed rest early, and she delivered that second baby at 34 weeks. The last is a 14-year-old and her mother who came into my office with abdominal pain. Her diagnosis was pregnancy. Their decision was theirs. They did not want an abortion. They don't believe in it. 439 puts decisions in the hands of patients and their physicians, which is where it belongs, not in the hands of politicians. Please vote for 439. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Nunnally.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Nunnally, ELIZABETHNUNNALLY. I'm testifying in opposition to Initiative 439 on behalf of Nebraska Family Alliance and the thousands of parents and families we represent who share our desire to protect women and children in Nebraska. We have been told by activists that Initiative 439 protects women, when in reality, it puts us at risk. Initiative 439 does not say that women shall have a fundamental right to abortion, or even that pregnant persons shall have a right to abortion. It gives, quote, all persons, unquote, a right to abortion, quote, without interference from the state, unquote.
This will overturn common sense laws protecting women's health and safety, eliminate laws that prevent forced and coerced abortion, and even remove parental notification requirements. For over a decade, NFA has worked on passing bipartisan legislation to combat human trafficking in Nebraska. We know that abortion is a tool used by human traffickers to cover up their horrific abuse and keep young women in bondage. Initiative 439 would allow traffickers to continue their abuse without law enforcement or parents having the opportunity to intervene. Further, Initiative 439 significantly alters the definition of viability to allow abortionists and non-physicians to make viability determinations, perform elective late-term abortions on babies who can feel pain, and influence the decisions of women in need of trusted professional care. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, we can all agree that men should not be able to force or coerce women into abortion. Parents should be involved in their daughters' lives, and the health and safety of women should be protected. Women and children in Nebraska deserve real care and support, not deceptive and dangerous proposals that jeopardize the health and safety of women, undermine parental rights, put girls at greater risk for human trafficking, and end the lives of precious baby boys and girls. For these reasons, Nebraska Family Alliance urges all Nebraskans to vote against Initiative 439. Thank you.
Next, Andy Curry Grubb.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Curry Grubb. It's ANDICURRY GRUBB. I'm the Executive Director for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Nebraska, which is the advocacy and political arm of Planned Parenthood North Central States here in Nebraska. As an organization, we mobilize supporters to protect, promote, and expand access to sexual and reproductive health care, and I am here on behalf of them to voice my support for Initiative 439. For many years, PPAN has been fighting to protect Nebraskans' access to abortion. In 2022, our worst fears came to be with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. We knew that this would give anti-abortion politicians and special interest groups the ability to completely ban abortion in our great state. After watching them attempt to do just that in the 2023 legislative session and succeeding in using unethical tactics to pass a 12-week ban after their first try at a 6-week ban failed, we knew something had to change. We could not subject Nebraskans to this fight year after year, not knowing if they would keep their right to make their own deeply personal medical decisions or have it stripped away. Especially when some of our leaders vowed to not stop until abortion access was completely gone in our state. A coalition of organizations, including those that advocate for maternal health, those who advocate for survivors of trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault, civic engagement organizations, and countless OBGYNs, we determined together that a constitutional amendment was the best way to prevent the political volleyball of abortion access from continuing. Initiative 439 is the result of that work. There are so many lies being spread about this initiative. I've heard them all, and I want to address them. 439 is intended to return the right to make decisions about abortion to patients, families, and doctors. It puts a reasonable limit on abortion, one that is based in science and medical best practices, rather than arbitrary limits like what we previously had in Nebraska. It allows doctors to do their jobs and treat patients that are experiencing an emergency or who have a non-viable pregnancy. What it does not do is allow people to break Nebraska laws, like reproductive, coercion, or human trafficking. And it does not allow medical care to be performed by anyone without oversight or safety regulations. Those exist under scope of practice laws and the Department of Health and Human Services regulation, and they will continue. To say otherwise is a desperate attempt to deceive voters and prevent the will of the people, the majority of whom think abortion should not be regulated by politicians. 439 simply moves the limit on abortion back to where it was under Roe versus Wade and takes control over medical care away from the government and gives it back to Nebraskans where it belongs.
Thank you. Next, Matt Heffron.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Heffron. Matthew, Matthehew, Heffron, Heffron. I'm an attorney with the Thomas More Society, a national nonprofit law firm with headquarters in Chicago and an office here in Omaha. I testify against 439 and on behalf of 434. I'll note that I'm a father of 3 daughters, as well as 3 granddaughters. I also happen to be the father of 3 sons and 2 grandsons. I oppose 439 because the Protect the Right to Abortion initiative will establish in Nebraska late-term abortion for nearly any reason, 2, abortion without any limitations or regulation whatsoever, and 3, it'll be presided over by non-physicians. Anyone who knows abortion law here in Nebraska knows that that's a sea change in Nebraska law. And the only way that you could accomplish that is by doing it deceptively. And so it's ironic that I follow a testifier who complains about deception on the other side, because 439 is based in deception. You could define the terms. There are a number of terms here that were not defined. They could define them, just that they defined viability. They chose not to define them. And the deception is in this. The terms, if you know the legal, where they are legally defined, you'll know it's outrageously deceptive what they're doing. Let's take a look, first of all, at the term health. In the initiative, it says that abortion can occur when needed to protect the life and health of the mother. If you don't know where health is defined, they should have defined it here. They didn't. You would go, lawyers would go to a case where the Supreme Court actually did define it. And that case is Doe v. Bolton. And in that case, it defined health to mean almost anything. Emotional health, mental health, familial health, it said, or maybe you'd go to the World Health Organization. They even include social health, whatever that may be. And so if you can get an abortion for health reasons, you can get abortion right up to birth. And anyone who denies that, who tries to say that it's abortion only up to viability, is being false. Let's take a look at another term, without interference of the state. That's actually fairly plain on its face. Except what you don't know is that those terms were taken out of a case called Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. And in that case, Justice Kennedy said, most fundamental rights, which is what 439 claims to be asking for, allow for some limitations. But Justice Kennedy said, if you had used the words without interference from the state, that would mean there could be no limitations. Well, the drafters of 439 knew that. The voters won't know that. But the drafters of 439 knew the sleight of hand that they were pulling. So when this is at some point argued about before the courts, they will go to that Casey definition and will realize that no, you can't do anything to interfere with abortion. Not only are the common sense limitations on abortion wiped out, you can't even be involved with regulation. That's a definite possible problem that 439 raises. Let's take a look at the terms, which I find in a different context would be humorous. Healthcare practitioners. Does anybody know what that means? You wouldn't. And in fact, you can't even find a real definition of it in Nebraska law, but you can find that term because healthcare practitioners is only used in Nebraska law concerning the Credentialing Act. That means any healthcare practitioner, that's where it's used, needs to be credentialed. You know how many different categories there are of healthcare practitioners in Nebraska? 34, I just counted them. 34 different categories, and they go all the way from not only physicians, but also podiatrists, for psychologists, all shapes of nurses. They even go to masseuses and athletic trainers. We don't know who is going to be able to make the viability determination in Nebraska. And at the Supreme Court, when this case was argued just recently, the attorney for 439 actually stated that they don't know how far it's going to go. So I also ought to comment briefly on extraordinary medical measures. Someone earlier said that this was all scientifically based. I'll tell you what, extraordinary medical measures is not defined in Nebraska law. It is actually in Catholic moral theology, which I find ironic. That's the only place I know that talks about that term. So this is an entirely deceptive initiative. It can only accomplish what it hopes to accomplish legally by doing so deceptively, because it doesn't present itself plainly to the voters. Therefore, I ask all voters to oppose 439 and to vote for 434. Thank you.
Next, we have Timothy Melcher.
Hello again. Could I ask if Emily Patel is going to be doing closing on?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. So my name is Timothy C. Melcher, Timothy, C as in Clifford, M as in Mike, Elcher, and I'm here today in support of Measure 439. I wanted to note for the record that I have already provided testimony for Measure 434, but I understand the transcripts are going to be separate, so I wanted to make sure they were cross-referenced. I spoke earlier in my testimony for 434 about the handouts that the Nebraska Catholic Conference has been passing out in regards to their interpretation of 439, and I do feel they have some legitimate points that I would like to hear proponents of 439 perhaps define. A couple of those being extraordinary medical measures and all persons, because when I read all persons, I assume that it meant intersex patients, and extraordinary medical measures, I'm not sure. I would think that incubators for premature births are not considered extraordinary. So again, if I could perhaps hear some definitions from the proponents for 439, that would be great. I also wanted to point out that minor medical care in Nebraska, age of majority is 19 and not 18. And yeah, so that might have some further implications on concerns then. And also in the criminal code, pregnancy is considered serious bodily injury under sexual assault statutes, which I find interesting given the subject matter. I also wanted to point out that I do not believe that pro-choice supporters have historically tried to expand abortion access past viability, where opponents of this measure have historically tried to completely ban abortion outright. And that concludes my testimony today.
Thank you. We have depleted the number of signed people for in opposition, so we'll continue with support. Aaron, you got me again with last name, but you are up next. I should have asked you before. I did that with joy. So.
My name is Aaron Feichtinger. That's ERIN, F as in Frank, EICHTINGER, and I am the Policy Director for the Women's Fund of Omaha, testifying in support of Initiative 439. I am also a Nebraska mother deeply concerned about raising my incredible daughter in a state where she currently has less rights over her body and her choices than I did when I grew up here. The simple fact is that all Nebraskans have the right to make their own decisions about their bodies, their families, and their futures without the government and non-medical professionals like elected officials interfering in those deeply personal and important decisions. This is the freedom we deserve and which we would get by passing Initiative 439. It is why women and those who love us have been showing up at the polls in waves every time abortion is on the ballot, and why we have come together to reject government interference into our personal lives and the lives of our families forced on us by our current abortion ban, and which would be enshrined in our state constitution by Initiative 434. Voters in Nebraska are being intentionally misled by Initiative 434, not only in its name, Protect Women and Children, when in arguments before the Nebraska Supreme Court, one of their lawyers admitted that the rights of women are secondary to those of the fetus, but particularly in the case of the so-called exceptions included in the language. Those exceptions are only words on paper, and they do not exist in the complex real world where Nebraskans are trying to access reproductive health care. In states with these so-called exceptions for the health of the mother, we have seen time and again the horrifying and sometimes deadly consequences of what happens when women attempt to avail themselves of those exceptions. Consequences that proponents of 434 are trying desperately here and in press conferences to convince Nebraskans can't happen here. Exceptions are only included to make abortion restrictions seem less harmful, but abortion restrictions are harmful to women. In Nebraska, over 50% of Nebraska women experience rape in their lifetime, and more than 50,000 Nebraskans, or 5.2%, have experienced unwanted pregnancy due to rape. Initiative 434's so-called exception requires a survivor to prove their trauma in order to access care. It also suggests medical professionals then must report that sexual assault to law enforcement, even though only a small percentage of survivors ever make the choice to report their choice. Sexual violence survivors do not owe us or anyone their trauma, and it should not be a mandate for them in order to access health care and take control of their bodies back. Proponents of 434 have spent a lot of time talking about victims of sexual violence while supporting an effort that disregards and takes away that survivor's agency to determine what care they need. We do not need to and should never have to prove that we deserve health care when we are pregnant. Our fundamental rights to bodily autonomy are not and should never be diminished when we are pregnant. Initiative 439 gives us back those fundamental rights to decide for ourselves what happens to our bodies, to shape our own futures, to decide for ourselves if and when and how to become a parent. Initiative 439 does not force us to demonstrate that we deserve health care. It respects us as fully equal human beings inherently deserving of care. Initiative 439 is our chance to take back our power from the outside interests and elected officials who have no business in our hospital rooms. We get to decide what happens to our bodies, lives, and futures, and we urge Nebraskans to vote for 439 and against 434. You won't have to remember my name.
Next, Mackenzie Lonke? 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 All right.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. My name is Mackenzie Lonke, MacKenzie and I am the Policy Fellow at Out Nebraska, a statewide nonpartisan nonprofit working to celebrate and empower LGBTQ+ Nebraskans. Out Nebraska speaks today in support of ballot initiative number 439, the Protect the Right to Abortion constitutional amendment, and we oppose ballot initiative number 434. Abortion access is healthcare access, and it is an LGBTQ+ issue. Bodily autonomy is at the root of freedom and liberty for our community. Furthermore, LGBTQ+ people can and do become pregnant. It is the case that members across the entire spectrum of identities need access to the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion. Banning and criminalizing abortion will most hurt people who already face discrimination and barriers to care, including women of color, trans and non-binary people, young people, and people in rural areas. Everyone deserves the freedom to access abortion care and reproductive health care when they need it, no matter what they look like, where they live, or who they are. Without the ability to control our own bodies, we have nothing. This constitutional amendment ensures that Nebraskans, not the government, are in charge of their own healthcare decisions. When people can make decisions that are best for their lives, our families thrive, and we build healthier communities where each of us can live with dignity. We all deserve access to medically sound, evidence-based care. These decisions need to be made between the pregnant person, their medical provider, and their own conscience. We all deserve to decide when, whether, and how we add to our families. The government has no business inserting themselves into these decisions. This access is a foundational right and value of our democracy. For these reasons, and for so many more being spoken here today, we support initiative number 439 and the right for medical decisions to be made by Nebraskans and their doctors. Thank you.
At this point, I've reached the end of my signed-in testifiers. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to testify at this time, either for or against? Please. Did you sign in at the front? Okay. Are you testifying for or against?
For. Okay. Thank you so much.
So you came in a little bit later. You have up to 5 minutes, and I'll give
Thank
you
you.
a wonderful 1-minute warning.
Thank you so much. My name is Jessica Todd, Jessica I am here on behalf of myself. I am a citizen of Nebraska. I am here to urge my fellow open-minded Nebraskans to vote yes on 439 and no on 434. I have been working in the field of this campaign, and I have spoken to hundreds of people over the past year about abortion in Nebraska, which is incredible because previously this subject has been so taboo, and to an extent it still is, but it is an astounding thing that now so many brave people are standing up and speaking about abortion. And I just would like to thank everybody who has done that so far and continues to do that, because after this is all over, we are still going to continue to talk about it and not shut up about it. There are many harmful and judgmental things and misconceptions about this issue that have been spread far and wide since the 1970s, when many of these antis have been born, even before. The anti-abortion voice has been loud and full of shame and hate. One of our missions in this campaign has been to educate Nebraskans about these misconceptions, false narratives, and flat-out lies. There are some folks, particularly those on the anti-side of this issue, whose minds will never change regarding this issue. However, I know there are a majority of Nebraskans who, while they would not choose to have an abortion for themselves, do not feel that they have the ability or position to make it for someone else. To those people, I hope they are listening to the judgmental and hateful rhetoric that is being spread by the antis, funded by Senator Pete Ricketts and perpetuated in a public hearing this week by Governor Pillen. Decisions about pregnancy and abortion belong to Nebraskans, not the government. In states where abortion has been on the ballot, voters have consistently rejected government interference. Seeing this, anti-abortion politicians have adopted a new dangerous tactic. From 4 months after we launched our initiative, they created theirs with similar colors, branding, and even a name, Protect Women and Children, that closely remembers our Protect Our Rights. And when I mean they, I mean Nebraska Right to Life and Nebraska Family Alliance, funded by Senator Pete Ricketts and his mom. 434's goal is to confuse voters. Many people unaware of the differences might accidentally vote against their own interests, thinking they are supporting abortion rights. Anti-abortion groups are relying on this confusion. While gathering signatures, we saw anti-abortion petitioners misrepresenting themselves and using language like exceptions for rape or incest, while concealing the truth that their narrative is still an abortion ban. Their petition is to keep the current law the same and to codify it in our Constitution. It is no different than what it currently is.
whatever they say is untruthful. If they even collected signatures for medical marijuana to trick voters into signing the wrong petition. This tactic was so effective that over 300 people submitted affidavits to remove their name from the anti-abortion petition once word got around. Now, their ads falsely claim that our initiative allows government interference in medical decisions. This is a lie. Their proposal still bans abortion and requires women to justify their need for care. Imagine the trauma of having to create a paper trail of abuse to access health care. The dishonest strategy undermines the integrity of ballot initiatives and threatens abortion rights across our country. In states with restricted abortion access, people seeking an abortion are forced to travel, often by themselves with no support, to an unfamiliar location. This causes an overflow of patients seeking care in those states where such bans do not occur. This overflow causes delay in care for many patients. If their care is delayed past 11 or 12 weeks of pregnancy, their abortion goes from a medical abortion to a surgical abortion, which is more intrusive, expensive, and takes longer to recover from, which can mean lost wages or possibly losing a job. It is no coincidence that many abortion bans are set at 12 weeks. For sure. It is no coincidence that many abortion bans are set at 12 weeks. Many of these abortion bans are directly affecting those rural Americans and those living below the poverty line because they are not able to quickly and easily move across state lines to access this care. States like Ohio, Kansas, and Kentucky have passed abortion rights measures, and Nebraska can do the same. This fight is bigger than abortion. It's about it's about who has the power over your body, who has the authority to make decisions for you, and who can control your future. When it comes to abortion, politicians need to stop judging Americans because they don't know their circumstances. Every pregnancy is different. Nebraskans need to be able to make their own decisions about pregnancy and abortion free from government interference. The very idea of legislating people's bodies is not acceptable and is a very slippery slope. This isn't about whether you support abortion. It's about whether the government should have the right to intervene. Banning abortion won't stop it. It will only make it unsafe. The confusion of the law will linger and can and has delayed access to care, forcing people to travel out of state for services, which is expensive and burdensome. Many people up here have been spouting biblical passages as though it's a guidebook and a fact that all must follow. It is such a short-sighted position to take your religious experience and beliefs that you think that they should apply to all Americans. The separation of church and state is enshrined in the First Amendment of our Constitution, yet is a large foundation for many arguments. No one is forcing anyone to have an abortion. Full stop. The language in this ballot measure that says all persons must have the fundamental right to abortion is with the intention of including trans people who may become pregnant. The anti-abortion activists have spread the idea that this language is here to force human traffickers and rapists to force their victims to have their abortions. It is yet another cruel opportunity for judgmental Nebraskans to disregard the trans experience. The current cruel 12-week ban includes an exception for pregnancies caused by rape, incest, or life-threatening pregnancies, but it requires patients to prove their trauma via a paper trail or be on the brink of death. Moreover, it sends a destructive message that a person's body isn't worth healthcare until it has been violated. This isn't healthcare, it is harm. End our current ban by voting yes on 439 and no on 434.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wanting to testify? And with that, we will go down with our closing statements, and I would ask Allie Berry to speak on behalf of the supporters. Feel free to rearrange whatever you need.
Got it really jumbled up over here. Okay. Hello, my name is Allie Berry, Allie Berry, Berry. I'm a Nebraska voter, Omaha resident, military spouse, and the campaign manager for Initiative 439. Today, it was made abundantly clear that Nebraskans must cast two powerful votes this November. One against Initiative 434, the first question on the ballot, and a vote for Initiative 439, the last question on the ballot. Vote for Initiative 439 because it ends the current abortion ban that has caused so many Nebraska women and families unnecessary pain. Vote for Initiative 434 to stop government overreach in our personal lives and give power back to patients and families to make their own healthcare decisions. Vote for 439 so Nebraska doesn't become the next Texas. We don't want pregnant women to have to flee the state, bleed at home, or suffer in pain because their doctor has to talk to an attorney or a politician before they can receive care. It's that simple. As you've heard today, and as we go back to our regular lives, you will hear a lot on commercials on TV and probably receive a lot of mail in your mailboxes about the two measures. Some of it is designed to confuse you, so allow me to be abundantly clear. A vote for Initiative 434 will not take away patients' rights. A vote for 439 will not allow anyone to be forced to have an abortion. 439 will not force taxpayers to pay for abortions. 439 will not threaten health and safety standards. 439 will not let unlicensed medical professionals perform abortions. It keeps the already strong regulations in the state. Politicians are close to permanently controlling healthcare decisions about our bodies. Governor Pillen said it during his election that he wanted a total abortion ban. His initiative, 434, will put the current abortion ban in our state constitution and leave the door open for the government to pass more laws and restrictions on our everyday rights. Initiative 434 will permanently put women with serious pregnancy complications in dangerous and high-risk situations because they cannot get the care they need from doctors in their home state. We, the people, can't let this happen. We, the people, can see through the lies and division and put patients back in control of their personal healthcare decisions. We, the people, can ensure women are treated with compassion and dignity as they grieve the loss of pregnancies they deeply wanted. In November, we must vote against Initiative 434 and for Initiative 439.
Thank you. Now I'd like to recognize Brenna Gross to provide closing comments for the opponents.
Thank you. Again, Brenna Graz. Let me be clear. Initiative 439's language does not guarantee scientific or compassionate care. It is dangerous for women and unborn children. 439 attempts to ban parental notification and promotes a cycle of abuse for human traffickers and sexual predators. Human traffickers could be allowed to continue their abuse in the shadows if Initiative 439 passes. Parental notification should be safeguarded. Our daughters deserve better than this. Abusive boyfriends and abusers could also assert a competing constitutional right to abortion. Initiative 439 does not empower women. Under 439, unlicensed, non-physicians could have the power to influence the medical decisions of a woman in crisis. Licensed physicians who have the medical training, licensing, and experience should be the ones providing guidance to women. Because of the lack of concrete medical standards and use of vague, broad, and confusing terminology, 439 invites political and court involvement in order to interpret what the initiative's language means. 439's viability standard is also novel. Nebraska statute currently states that viability means the potential for an unborn child to live merely momentarily outside of the womb with natural or artificial means. But that is not what this initiative says. It does not require mere survival. It states that viability means in the professional judgment of a healthcare practitioner, there is a significant likelihood of the fetus's sustained survival outside of the uterus without extraordinary medical measures. It rewrites the medical standard of care for licensed physicians in a manner that could allow for even elective late-term abortions. Late-term abortions are dangerous. They take days to complete. This initiative, allowing for these elective late-term abortions without state interference, does not secure women's health and safety. It jeopardizes it. Initiative 439 is extreme. It is not what is best for Nebraska women and families. Initiative 439 invites abuse, vagueness, and unscientific standards and puts women in danger. Nebraska women and girls deserve our love and support. A vote against 439 is compassionate and common sense. I urge every Nebraskan to make the common sense choice and vote against the last initiative on your ballot, Initiative 439. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the hearing on Initiative 439. I'd like to thank all of you that took the time today to testify, and thank you to the proponents and the opponents, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Also, thank you to those who submitted written comments to our office by the deadline. We received 5 comments supporting Initiative 439 and 0 comments opposing Initiative 439, and those comments will be added to the public record. Finally, thank you to Mia Sanderson, a UNO student who helped us allow my team in Lincoln to take a break as we are 9 days away from the election. And speaking of that, the reason why we all are here is because all of these measures that we are having hearings about will be on the ballot on November 5th. So please remember to vote on November 5th or earlier if you so choose. Your ballot will be waiting for you. Please go cast it. This hearing is adjourned.